Folks, Governor Andy Beshear out of Kentucky right now is truly laying the blueprint for how Democrats need to message going forward. And I think more people needs to be paying attention to his approach. Because these days everyone tries to play politics with every issue. The media tries to always put the spin on it and catch someone in some sort of gotcha moment or get a piece of clickbait out of it. And Andy Beshear always comes right back to the point, right back to the issues at hand. He doesn't play into the politics that everyone seems to play into, and I have the utmost respect for him for that. Recently, a deadly tornado hit Kentucky, the state that I grew up in, and ripped through London, Kentucky, and Somerset. Andy has been on the ground there talking to people, listening to people, and helping people, and he's not took a shot at Trump, even though Donald Trump has not mentioned one word about this while he's busy sharing his ridiculous post on social media. He's not said anything about the state that he won. But Andy has not used this as a moment to do that. And when he was on CNN recently, they tried to corner him into talking about Joe Biden's health. And Andy shows us how we really need to do this, folks. Take a look at this.
Have to ask you while we have you about news of the day today that includes this book written by my colleague Jake Tapper and Axios' Alex Thompson on President Biden's mental decline. I remember speaking to you right after you had been to the White House to meet with President Biden after that debate, that infamous debate. And I'm just wondering what your reaction is now to these details coming out about how Biden struggled to remember names of his advisors and people in his inner circle that kept his decline hidden from voters. What do you think about that, and how can Democrats regain trust from voters?
Well, when you're the governor of Kentucky, you end up seeing the president 1 or 2 times a year. So I wasn't able to observe the things that other people are talking about. But I think it's important for Democrats as we move forward to be focused on what matters most to people, and that's their job and whether they can support their family. It's their next doctor's appointment for themselves, their parents, or their kids. It's the roads and bridges they drive every day, the school they drop their kids off at, and public safety in their community. That's what the American people are screaming for Democrats and Republicans to address. And I know this is the news of the day, but people desperately want us focused on them and helping them get by.
Now, notice how Andy handled himself right there. He didn't go after Joe Biden, which a lot of Democrats right now are trying to do. They're trying to figure out what their next move is going to be. And a lot of them are listening to the Charlie Kirks and the Steve Bannons of the world, and they're completely misreading the room. So they think, yeah, let's just go ahead and throw Joe Biden under the bus and try to distance ourselves from him. Andy didn't even take that approach at all. As a matter of fact, it was just like, hey, look, as the governor of Kentucky, I might see him twice a year. I didn't see the things that you're talking about. Now, let's get back to the issues at hand. And when he did that, he didn't go after Trump or slam him either. He just went right back to what we're all going through and what we all want out of life. And I think that's the conversation that more of us needs to start having as we move forward. It's time to, and don't get me wrong, I'm always going to be pointing out the over-the-top outlandish shit that Trump says and does. I'm going to be pointing out the fraud. I'm going to be pointing out the grift. I'm always going to bring that out because I think it is important to show people that this guy doesn't really care about them and that he's all about grifting and he's all about himself. But as we go forward, we need to stay more laser focused on the issues at hand, which is we all want to see people have a living wage. There are people, my mom and dad were children of the 50s. In their era, people were able to have a job, work a living wage job, minimum wage job back then. They were able to work at a gas station pumping gas and take their families on vacation and build houses and retire. And that's not out there for people like us anymore. And when I'm talking to my children who are now going out into the workplace for the first time, they're looking at me saying, "Dad, I can't make it out there. I can't do it anymore. It's like I can't do it." And I'm like, well, I came up right at a time when it was all crumbling too. So it's been crumbling for a long time, and we need to get back to talking about those things and talking about how that we want to see people have a living wage. We want to see people have universal health care. We really do want to see people's lives made better. It's not about giving people handouts in this world. It's about people having a hand to play in the game. And we don't want to be busy down stuck in the mud fighting culture wars and blowing up Bud Light with Kid Rock. We want everybody to be able to live their lives and us live ours, just a simple live and let live and see a better country for everybody. And I think if we can get back to talking about those things and having reasonable discussions and meeting with people in the middle who are willing to have a reasonable discussion. I want to make one thing clear on this channel because a lot of times when I say that I refuse to sit down with certain people, I'm talking about Nazis, folks. I'm talking about people who sniffed the seat of Donald Trump after he stood up, okay? I'm not going to entertain that type of lunacy. I'm not going to sit down with someone who thinks a Nazi salute is cool, or I'm just not. I'm not going to entertain a white supremacist. I don't believe in that. But to people who once upon a time were Democrats and got disillusioned and walked away, to people who are moderates and independents and Republicans who have different ideas, I'm all about sitting down and having conversations about how we can move this forward. So I've never really watched a whole lot of the Flagrant podcast. I've saw clips of it. I don't think I've ever sat through an entire episode until recently when Bernie Sanders went on, and I thought they had a good conversation. I don't agree with everything those guys said to Bernie, but I think that Bernie was able to have a conversation with them, and I think he was able to make them think. So I would recommend people go watch that. Those are the type of conversations that we need to be having. And right here, Bernie pretty much comes clean on something that all of us knew all along. But I want to play this clip right here because there's something I want to say about it after you watch it. Take a look.
I think a lot of voters had is like they didn't even know if it was her. We didn't even know if Biden was president. We didn't even know if these were her talking points. And we felt that over the last 4 elections, Democrats, we felt that we didn't have a say on who could be president. We talk a lot about the Republicans being autocrats and oligarchs and taking over democracy, but from the Democrat perspective, and I'm a lifelong Democrat, I felt like the Democratic Party completely removed the democratic process from its constituents. And I think they need to have some accountability of that.
No argument here.
I donated for you. I mean, I wanted you to, like, 2016, I was like, this is going to happen. This guy's going to do it. And it felt like they stole it from me. And I'll be honest, it broke my heart when you supported him.
Look, but you have, in the world that I live in, you got a choice. And I mean, a lot of people, including my wife, agree with you. But, you know, you're down to a choice. Is it going to be Hillary Clinton or is it going to be Donald Trump? Not a great choice.
But it ended up being him anyway, so why don't we burn it down?
Well, because it's easy to say burning it down means that children are not going to have, food to eat, that the schools will deteriorate, people will not have health care.
I got it.
And I'm an elected official. I got to represent the people.
That's fair.
And I can't turn my back on.
But then could we not also say if ostensibly there hasn't been a fair primary for the Democrats since 2008, are they not also a threat to democracy? Yes. We often hear.
Fair enough. That is, yeah, I'm not going to argue with that point.
You see, folks, I was one of those guys, just like that guy. I was heartbroken when Bernie embraced it. It was a really depressing moment when Bernie embraced that. I wanted to see him come out swinging against it. But I took the same approach Bernie did, and I didn't even hear him say what he just said there. I thought to myself, okay, we can't burn it down. I know a lot of people wanted to, and I remember friends arguing with me back then going, let's just burn it down, Brando. And I was like, no, we can't burn it down because innocent people will suffer if we do, and they have. So I lined up behind Hillary Clinton, and I held my nose and voted for her anyway because I knew what was coming. I could see it coming a mile away. There was this attitude and there was this belief of, let's just burn it to the ground. And I knew that if we did that, innocent people would suffer. And we had a decision to make, and I felt I had a decision to make, and that's why I voted for Hillary Clinton. And I do believe that she would have been a much better president than Donald Trump, and I do believe that Roe versus Wade would not have been overturned. All of the stories that I've covered here on the channel about young women bleeding out and needing help, I think a lot of that could have been avoided. I had a lot of people when Roe versus Wade was overturned after they saw Trump stack the Supreme Court. I had people that argue with me and was like, I'm not getting behind Hillary. They screwed Bernie. I'm not doing this. I had so many people reach out to me and say, Brando, I wished I had listened to you back then. I wish that I would have seen the bigger picture. I'm not trying to flex and say I told you so in that moment. It's just that that's the way it was. So I can respect both Andrew Schultz's stance there and Bernie's of, man, I was heartbroken. I just kind of wanted to burn the whole thing down. But then the reality of we have a decision to make, and there's going to be innocent people suffer if we burn it all down. And so we can't take that approach. And there's one thing that when I watched that whole episode, and like I said, I highly recommend that y'all do so. But there's one thing that I took away from it. A lot of these guys have this idea of, well, the Democratic Party is corrupt and they've got problems, and we don't feel like that they've had a fair primary since 2008. And that's absolutely a fair point to make. I will not argue with you on that point. If you're going to talk about democracy and you're going to talk, then you have to give people more options. You can't have primaries where you just say, oh, we picked who's next. We picked whose turn it is. Here, take this person. So I totally agree with that stance. But what I saw, and I want everyone to understand my reasoning on why I went so hard in the paint against Donald Trump, and why that I was like, you know what? I don't really agree with the way this has all went down, but I'm going to get solidly behind Kamala Harris because, again, I see the greater threat that's coming right at us. Now we're seeing the Constitution shredded. Now we're seeing people sent out of this country with no due process. Now we're seeing a president who ignores the Supreme Court. Now we're seeing a president who's having mayors and judges and congresswomen arrested, who is going after journalists, going after media, going after rock singers. I mean, we're seeing someone just get in there and completely dismantle everything that we once held sacred. And so, while I will give you all day long that the DNC needs completely rebuilt and rebranded, 100%. I'm with David Hogg on this one. Get the older people out of the way. I don't give a shit if it's your turn. Let's breathe new life into the party. Let's resonate with people, and let's bring young people back into the fold. But we have to look at what we were up against. That's just how I see it. And that's why that I went the way that I went. Because January 6th, actually I'll go back before that, the way Donald Trump handled COVID, and then January 6th, a convicted felon, a man liable of sexual abuse that defamed the victim, all the things that Donald Trump did were just massive deal breakers for me. It wasn't that I was pro-DNC. It wasn't that I was pro the way they were doing things. It was bigger picture. And every time I see people on the left complaining about something Donald Trump is doing right now, I say to myself, well, Kamala Harris or Hillary Clinton, either one would not have been doing those things. Now, does the DNC need fixed? Yes, we will have that conversation. I'm more than willing to have that conversation. I'm just explaining why that I went the direction I went with it, so people will understand that I've always been about the bigger picture and about the idea of this dude is dismantling everything. And I really believe that if we can ever get back in and get and swing the pendulum back in our direction, I really believe we need to take a long look at things, and we need to fix the whole system to where one person can't just abuse it. That's my biggest beef with all of this, is Donald Trump absolutely has abused that power. And I don't think Hillary Clinton or Kamala Harris would have did it on the level that he's done it. It's something that, we've never seen before. But I truly believe that if we'll stick with the issues at hand, like Andy Beshear, whenever somebody tries to take us that direction, just keep taking it back to the issues at hand. If we can sit down with reasonable people who may have a different point of view, and we can work things out, and if we can bring it back around, I would love to see that happen. I want to see that happen. I want to have those type of conversations, but I am not going to sit down with somebody that sniffed Donald Trump's ass. It's ridiculous to me. And I know people will say, well, you got to go get out of your safe space. I will absolutely sit down with those bros any day of the week. I'm not going to sit down with the little white supremacist dudes that says all their shit, and people who are scared of black pilots. If I did, I would want to make them, I would hold them accountable before I ever started talking. And so the interview would go nowhere. But anyway, I really believe stick to the issues at hand. Talk about what people are going through. More and more people will suffer under this administration. More and more people will have buyer's remorse as we go forward. They're going to finally get to see the truth here, because you got to understand, a lot of these people felt cheated. Even though it was bullshit, I know. But they felt cheated. They felt like that if we'd have just let Donald Trump finish his job, that their lives would be better. Now he's in there, and they're getting a dose of what we were trying to warn them about all along. So I really do believe that we can swing it back our way, but stick to the issues, have the reasonable conversations, and work at fixing this for everybody. And not to sound like Bernie here, but not just those at the top, not just the 1%. We gotta fight for everybody, and we can't leave nobody behind. I strongly believe that you cannot leave a group of people behind. You cannot throw a group of people under the bus. You have to stand up for everyone, because if they come for one, they come for all. I know that may sound like a cliche, but I mean it, folks. It's just the truth.